Hey everyone, it's your friend and colleague Jesse Green, and you're listening to the Savvy Dentist podcast. It's great to have your company for another episode of the show. Today, I want to talk to you about the talent trap. And the talent trap is really insidious because we all understand that to build and scale a great practice, we need to be able to work with and through other people. The problem is a lot of people are looking to recruit unicorns rather than build capability into their business. They're constantly believing that next right hire is going to be the savior. They're going to solve everything. But the reality is when performance drops, these same practice owners look to blame people rather than looking at the systems, because it is the lack of systems or the poor systems that have created this result in the first place. So let's dig a little deeper. So what I'd really like to start with is understanding the symptoms of a talent-dependent business. A business that is talent-dependent is easily derailed through a single resignation. If you've got a key person in your practice and they leave, all hell breaks loose, chaos reigns, and all of a sudden there's panic amongst you as the practice owner, the team, and everyone else. So that is the first sign of a talent-dependent business. The second sign is that when you have a talent-dependent business, that resignation or other resignations mean you're constantly training. And what that means is you're training and retraining the same thing over and over and again. And what that means is you don't have a system and a process for onboarding, upskilling, and managing people. So the big idea here is you don't rise to the level of your people. You actually fall back to the level of your systems and your training. So the next key point I want to make is that you don't find great teams, you actually build them by design. And there's a couple of ingredients that go into building great teams. The first is culture. And really when it comes to culture, what we've got to be able to understand is what are the standards of performance that we're willing to accept. We've got to be able to codify those standards. We've got to be able to identify what behaviors are rewarded and what behaviors are corrected. And equally, when it comes to culture, we've got to understand what are our values. What are the values that are non-negotiable for us as a business? And how do we understand whether those values are being upheld or whether they're being violated? And ultimately, with culture, is a lot of people will think that these are kind of fancy slogans that sit up on a wall, but it's really not. It's how the practice operates, how the people within it behave on a day-to-day basis. That's really what culture is. Now, the second part of a great team that's built by design is having the right playbooks in place. And again, if you've got a great team with a great culture, they're going to need some playbooks to be able to operate by. And of course, every repeatable task needs to be documented. That's a key thing. And when it comes to documenting the tasks, you've got to be able to understand what the purpose is. What are we trying to achieve here? What is the actual outcome that we're trying to achieve? What are the steps involved? And then what are the success criteria of those steps? So how do we know it's done correctly? And my big idea around this is don't start by writing 100 SOPs and kind of getting bogged down in this endless list. Start by writing 10 or 15, the ones that actually move the needle. Because one of the things that I have found is that as dentists, we tend to get bogged up in detail. And what I mean by that is rather than having systems for every little thing, have systems for things that actually make a difference and start there first. The third essential element of a team built by design is really having great accountability structures. Now, of course, when it comes to having accountability structures, we need to be able to give our team members clarity of what success looks like. So there's no point asking someone to kick a goal without telling them where the goalposts are. So how this shows up is through scorecards. And what scorecards are a set of criteria, a set of success criteria that you can measure their actual performance against. And that's really key and really important. Now, on the practice level, you might have your dashboards and so on, where you measure your leading indicators, your lagging indicators. But the second part of accountability is making sure you have a meeting rhythm so that these accountability metrics are reviewed in a really transparent manner, because transparency breeds accountability. And I think it's really important to be able to have an open and honest and frank conversation as a team about how we're performing. Are we moving forward in the direction of our goals, or are we plateauing or stagnating? And how do we change that? So again, I think the big idea around this is to understand that structure removes emotion. And when the structure runs really, really well, the people rise up to new levels. Now, the next thing to understand is that strong systems help average people perform like pros, and that's because we've built capability. And so if you were to think about a talent-dependent practice versus a capability-driven business, from the point of view of hiring, if you're a talent-dependent business, you're going to be trying to find great people, right? But if you've got a capability-driven business, you're going to be installing great systems that elevate people to that next level, and that's a really key difference. Equally, from the point of view of training, what a talent-driven business will do is have shadowing and use gut feel. And a capability-driven business, on the other hand, will have a clear process for onboarding and elevating. And that's really key. And of course, when it comes to retention of your great people, a talent-dependent business is going to be reliant on culture and personalities, whereas a capability-driven business is going to have clarity, progression, autonomy, and all those things that we know from Maslow's hierarchy that contribute to great team retention. So don't hire heroes, build the infrastructure to retain your best people. So the next key point is to understand that most practice owners want their team to take initiative, but the reality is most practice owners have never created the environment for the team to feel safe to take the initiative. And that's because as practice owners, we're often micromanaging, we're often correcting little mistakes. And what that means is the team are too afraid to take a risk. They're too afraid to make a wrong decision lest they be criticized or corrected. And so what's really important to set this record straight or to have people take more initiative is to install thinking filters. We want to train people to think rather than giving people the answers. When people come to you with a question, go back to them with a question so it trains them to think. You might be asking questions like, so what's the outcome? Or what are the options? Which of those options do you think is the best? And why do you think it's the best? So the second thing is to stop managing people and start managing systems. So when people come to you with questions or queries, give them the playbook rather than the answer. Point them in the direction of the resource. And then if something breaks, let's fix the system rather than trying to fix the person. Now, alongside managing the systems, we need to make sure that we measure what matters. And what this really relies upon is each team member having a handful of metrics, no more than 1 or 2 or 3 metrics tops that they are responsible for. It's really important to understand that if you ask someone to be responsible for that metric, they've got to be able to influence that metric. So for example, if you're the front desk person, you might be responsible for the rebooking rate. If you're the treatment coordinator, you might be responsible for the amount of treatment that's accepted versus the amount of treatment presented. If you're the practice manager, you might be responsible for the retention ratio of your patient base. All of these things must fall under the direct control of the person who's responsible for the metric. So I think it's also really important to understand that if something goes awry, we've now got to coach outcomes and not get too caught up in the feelings. It's great to give people encouragement and slaps on the back and all those sorts of things, but pep talks don't really last. And so remember, we fall back to our training, we fall back to our systems. And so that means we've got to be able to coach people to become the best version of themselves. So again, if something does go right, start by coaching, start by being curious rather than judgmental. Start by asking questions like, what was the outcome? What system did you follow? What would you improve next time? And so on and so forth. And let them do the thinking. Let them come up with the ideas, because I guarantee it, they're going to come up with better ideas than us most of the time because they're actually at the coalface doing the job. Now, here's a controversial thing I want to share with you. From time to time, things are going to go awry. There's going to be a boo-boo. There's going to be a mess up. There's going to be something that doesn't work out. And I think it's really important that if someone makes a mistake, it's just as important to let them fix it. Because when we rush in and on our white horse and our knight in shining armor kind of outfit, we rob them of the opportunity to fix the mistake. And most of the learning comes by fixing the mistake rather than having someone fix it for you. So what we really want is failure, but with guardrails. Create a safe space for people to try things. Give them the opportunity and the latitude to try a few new things. And if things go right, also give them that opportunity to fix it. That's where the real learning is going to occur. So here's the issue. If your team can't make decisions, if they can't make the call, if they can't try new things and make a mistake and then fix it, you don't actually have depth. You have dependence. And what that means is at some point or another, you're going to remain the answer guy, the answer girl, and everyone's going to keep coming back to you. And that's not what scales. So here's the big idea. Unicorns don't really exist. So stop chasing them. Start building capability instead. And if you do happen to find the unicorn, or maybe there is one out there and they happen to land in your backyard, that's awesome. But understand that as soon as that person leaves, you're going to be back to where you started. So you might as well build that capability now. Build the capability, build the team, build a robust, bulletproof practice, and I promise you'll thank me for it later. So I hope you found this episode helpful. Look forward to seeing you on the next one. Until then, take good care. Bye for now. Hey everyone, it's Jesse here. I hope you enjoyed that episode of the podcast. If you're looking for some more tools, some more insights, some more inspiration to help you create a practice that you love, as well as a life that you love, well, head across to savvydentist.com and check out all the goodies that we have there waiting for you right now.